On today's show, our keto journey begins, and it begins right now. The first question we want to ask, of course, is what is keto? So the keto diet is a high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb diet. It is similar to Atkins and other low-carb diets, but it does differ in the macronutrients. Macronutrients being fat, protein, and carbohydrates. These will often be referred to simply as macros, and it's usually the amount compared to each other, so whether it be in grams or percentages. There is a higher emphasis on the fat side, and it does tend to restrict carbs more, so you'll have high fat percentage to a very low carb percentage. Now, before we get into keto, let's take a quick step backward and talk a tiny bit about the standard North American diet. So the standard North American diet is very carb heavy, and those carbs, of course, will break down into glucose. Glucose is the base unit of sugar, which makes up all of the carbs from simple sugars all the way up to complex carbohydrates. When this glucose is broken down, it goes into your bloodstream. When you have higher blood sugar levels, it can lead to something called hemoglobin A1C. When you have higher blood sugar levels, that sugar does tend to bind to your hemoglobin, which is an iron-containing molecule, part of a red blood cell. If you get too much sugar bound on your red blood cell, it is an indication of something called, if it's not too bad, it's pre-diabetes. If it's really bad, it's diabetes. And we're talking type 2 diabetes, not type 1. That's completely a different ballgame. So high blood sugar levels will cause your A1C values to go up, and this is used to determine if you have diabetes. Now, your body, of course, doesn't want this to happen. So what your body does is when you have a lot of sugar in your blood, it releases insulin. Insulin is a hormone that is responsible for fat storage. So your insulin is going to try to lower those values down so that less sugar is binding to your red blood cells so that your A1C is not going up. And in some people that works absolutely fine and they're able to not become, of course, diabetic. But when your diet is a little out of control or your metabolism just isn't working completely correctly, then you start to get into a situation where your insulin levels are just not cutting it. Your blood sugar is just too high and your A1C goes up. You'll end up being prescribed insulin to give your body a bit of a help to get that sugar out of the bloodstream, because that is a good thing. If you have too much sugar in your bloodstream for longer periods of time, it can have some pretty horrific effects. In larger doses, can be toxic in our bloodstream, so that becomes a bit of an issue. Of course, having a lot of insulin in your bloodstream, well, that then makes it more difficult to lose weight. And the reason for that is that if you have a hormone flowing through your bloodstream that is trying to remove sugar and trying to store fat, it makes it hard to start pulling fat out. So for ideal weight loss, if you can lower that insulin level, that is great. On keto, the low carb levels will cause a metabolic shift away from burning sugar to burning fat. So instead of burning sugar for energy, we're getting our energy from the stored fat. Now this, of course, leads to lower blood sugar levels, which of course thus causes your A1C to come down. It can prevent you from becoming diabetic, and over time, it can even reverse type 2 diabetes. Those lower insulin levels will actually make it easier to release fat from your cells because that fat's needed for ketosis. That's fantastic. It makes it easier to lose weight. That's one of the reasons that keto is so popular. So ketosis requires carbs to be limited to 20 to 50 grams per day. So initially when you begin a keto diet, your body will utilize your glycogen stores first before going into ketosis. So glycogen is simply a different form of glucose that's stored in your muscles. Now the actual way it's stored, it's actually bound to water. So for every gram of glycogen that you have in your muscles, it will be bound to 3 to 4 grams of water. So when you start burning these glycogen stores, you are going to have a significant water weight loss. So in the first few weeks on a keto diet, you're going to see big numbers, but those numbers are deceiving. Those numbers, they look really big. A lot of it is water weight. So initially you do lose a lot of water weight. You do lose fat, of course. So once, of course, the glycogen is used up, ketosis will ramp up. Now, some people get very concerned about, well, am I in ketosis now? Has ketosis begun? Well, there are different ways you can certainly check. A nice, simple, easy testing method is by using a ketone testing strip to see if you are in ketosis. Basically, it's a little strip that you pee on. The strip will come with a guide on the side to show you compare the colors. I will give a disclaimer with these. I don't think they're 100% accurate. They do miss some of the molecules that are key indicators of ketosis. They can give you a bit of an indication that you're getting in. If you start using ketone testing strips while you're still burning glycogen, they're not going to show anything. You don't want to get discouraged. Honestly, a lot of times if you're following your macros, so if you're keeping your carbs in that limit and you're eating mostly fat, moderate protein, you normally don't even need to worry about it. You're going to get into ketosis. Sometimes the keto testing strips can be interesting. It can be a little bit fun just to sort of get a gauge where you are. There are more advanced things that you can use, like there are blood tests. You can get like a ketone tester. So it takes a small prick of your blood and it tests it. Whether or not you need to get that or whether or not you need to get into that part, I usually say don't do it right away. Just don't get caught up in the technicals initially. As you're easing your way into keto, the fine tuning can come a bit later, and you'll find that the videos on this channel are going to be structured in that way. So let's just talk a little bit about the benefits of ketosis. So obviously the biggest benefit is weight loss. Well, it may not be the biggest, but it's going to be the one that most people are probably here on this channel right now because that's what they want, of different factors for various diseases. For example, diabetes. So as we mentioned, it can reverse and it can prevent type 2 diabetes. So it can also help with heart disease. Once again, removing fat, lowering blood pressure, improving your lipid profile. All of these things, of course, really, really help. Now, in regards to cancer, there are some cancers that are high sugar consumers. So if you were to get a cancer that uses a lot of sugar, so being on a keto diet has shown that some tumors can actually be slowed down in their growth. With a lot of the diseases we're mentioning here, these are all in early research. So there have been positive results initially. Just a couple other diseases that we've had some positive results with is with Alzheimer's disease, epilepsy. Now, all of the research on epilepsy was done with epileptic children, and this was done way, way back in the early 1900s. And that's where keto initially was developed, is in the early 1900s as a treatment for epilepsy. There have also been some positive signs with Parkinson's disease, polycystic ovary syndrome. Some brain injuries have also shown some early promise. But take that all with a grain of salt. Hedge your horses on the weight loss and the diabetes and the heart disease. Those are the three that we have the most information about when it comes to scientific research. What can and can't you eat on keto? So the foods that you can eat, they include everything from meat, fatty fish, eggs, butter, cream, cheese, nuts, seeds, healthy oils. So those are going to be like your avocado oils, coconut oils, avocados, of course, low carb veggies. So spinach is a great one, for example, and spices like your salt and your pepper. Those are all great. But what foods can't you eat? Well, obviously you can't have sugary foods or grains, starches. Most fruits, believe it or not, there's a lot of sugar in your fruit. Beans, legumes, root vegetables, tubers, low-fat or diet products, sauces, unhealthy fats. So those are mostly your vegetable oils. Alcohol, we'll revisit alcohol because there are some alcohols that are less harmful. Also, sugar-free diet foods. They tend to be filled with some interesting things, and we'll definitely do a video on them at one point. The side effects of keto. And I touched on this in the last video, a little bit about the keto flu. Most of the side effects, they're mild to moderate symptoms, and for the average person, they only last a few days. And it's more or less just getting yourself used to being off the sugar, because a lot of times sugar can be a little bit addictive. So I've heard of people who've had headaches as they're weaning off of sugar and things like that. But those are the side effects. They're not too bad. And some people do not even experience the keto flu at all. And so that is some basic information on keto. Of course, this channel is also about my personal journey, and that's where we have the weigh-in. Now, I was hoping to film the weigh-in. However, to be very honest, my scale is so reflective, you could pretty well see my entire naked body as I stood on the scale. Plus, I also found the contrast wasn't very good. So I'm not going to put a weigh-in on here, but what I will do is I will each week add the number in. Next week, we'll start talking about the financial little challenge part that we're going to add as well to this video. So I'll bring that in. On the screen, you're going to see my initial weigh-in. That is the number that we're going to work with, and we'll move forward with that number to make all of our calculations as we're calculating how well it's doing. So this is going to be fun going forward, especially once we start to get some data and we can sort of take a look at things. In the meantime, I think that's enough. If you like this video, please click on the like. If you want to follow this journey and get healthy with me, then click on the subscribe. Maybe hit that little bell to know when I'm uploading new videos. Hint, it will be every Saturday. I think that's it for now. Take care, and let's see if we can lose together.